Hello again everybody and welcome back to Dark Souls 3. We're gonna visit the Grand Archives today, which is the last proper gameplay area. But first, let's actually head to Orbeck, just to show you which spells we got, because this time we're actually gonna run an intelligence build, but we're also gonna talk to him a bit to get a little bit of lore, or rather some items to be more specific. After buying 3 sorceries, you get the, first item we'll be getting, and after buying some specific more related to stealth, you'll get one more.
Oh, I have something for you. You're a fine sorcerer now, no mistake. You should have something to prove it. Go on. If I'm giving something away, you better well take it. How do you like gimmicks, friend? This is a sign, a cipher, employed by sorcerers who use quietude to their advantage. With this, you can be sure to tell friend from foe from your very first encounter. It's a very old practice at this point, but one that you deserve to know.
And with that, we never have to talk to him ever again. Well, it's true, we don't have to, but there's one more sorcery scroll in the game. And if we want to use the spells within, we need to actually, give it to him. Plus, we'll also actually finish his questline once we have all that and bought all the spells, but more on that when you get to that. Meanwhile, the Young Dragon Ring is the lesser magic boost ring, which actually stacks with the other one, so we can totally stack them. There's also different items that will help us boost our magic, like the Dusk Crown, which is actually what we're wearing. Unfortunately, it looks kind of, dumb. And we do actually need a key to enter the Grand Archives. It is, however, right in front of the Grand Archives. But this item will only appear once you have actually defeated 3 Lords of Cinder. This is just to gate you to not get into there. And quite honestly, there's not really much of a reason to keep you from going in there, because you need to defeat all the Lords of Cinder anyway to reach the end of the game. But you also need to get through here, so yeah, I don't really see much of a reason to block the player from going in there. It's hard enough to get here as is, because you need to fight the Dancer of the Boreal Valley early if you want to get here sooner in the game. I mean, technically you could also get here, not necessarily as soon as you get access to the High Wall of Lothric, which is right at the start of the game, but you could just, go there somewhere in the mid-game. The Dancer should be pretty doable. I mean, she's already doable at the beginning of the game, just very difficult because she can kill you easy. And still more Titanite chunks. And I kind of ignored the fact that there was a Crystal Sage, but there is in fact a Crystal Sage. There's 2 total. We already killed one in form of a boss encounter, and the other one will harass us through most of this area. The first section of it, rather. And the first section, I have to say, is quite long, so we'll see a lot of Crystal Sage. The good news, however, is if we manage to kill the Crystal Sage once, it's dead forever, and we never need to kill him again. The bad news is there's plenty of those Thrall thieves. And I went over this a bit, I think, in the last, or the video before the last video. But they can be quite difficult to deal with. If you let them do anything, that is. If you're the first one to actually make a move, it's relatively simple taking them out. Which is good, because they actually appear as soon as the Undead Settlement. Then next up they actually appear in the Cathedral of the Deep. And from there, unless I'm missing something, they next appear in the Lothric Castle. As far as I'm aware anyway, I might have missed something obvious. And here's something not so obvious. You might have noticed that there was a prompt on screen allowing us to dunk our head in wax. And you might be inclined to believe that this is a bad idea, because normally it would, but in this game it actually helps. Well, there's no reason in me doing it right this instant. Because I know exactly what I need it for, and I don't need it for that guy. And while he otherwise would be a pretty formidable foe in these tight quarters, with some magic we can fairly easily take him out. I didn't even have to go in close for that last hit with my sword. I could have just, you know, kept using magic, but sometimes it just pays off to preserve some of your focus points. Even though you do have the option of using your Estus, your Ashen Estus that is, to just, you know, mitigate all focus loss. And now it's time to dunk our head in wax. That seems like a very sane thing to do, so naturally it's in a Souls game. And its use may not be immediately apparent. In fact, you might dunk your head into wax and might think, yeah, this isn't useful at all. But the truth is that those hands would otherwise not just damage us slightly, but just very, very slightly, they would also curse us. As long as you have a wax head, it doesn't do anything. And you can reach that one lever here in peace, and we don't have to worry about anything. And we can even see the you know, bookshelf it's lowering. And this is actually one of the more well-hidden secret paths, mainly because I think that the switch is kind of, well, it blends in real well. And the witch's locks are a whip-type weapon. It's fairly decent, actually, especially for its weapon art. And the power within we got was a very powerful spell from Dark Souls 1, but it's kind of useless here. What it does is it significantly increases your damage output, but on the other hand, you also constantly take damage. Now the problem here is that it doesn't really take very long until it actually expires, so there's not much of a use to using it. It lasts for a couple seconds, you might activate, get a hit in, and then you have to dodge away again, and by the time you next get a chance to get up close, the effect has already worn off. So I don't think it's worth using it, and the damage increase isn't really that good either. Anyway, it's stealth time. We have our walking noises muffled, as well as our visibility. Well, I would say we're invisible, but then again, the crystal sage seems to be aiming at us just about right. This of course doesn't make us completely invisible to enemies anyway. And unfortunately, it also doesn't last very long. This is actually the only time I used Hidden Body. And what's... well, okay. That was weird. Anyway, that was the only time I used Hidden Body in this game. Actually, it was the first time. In the first game, it was actually useful. I just recall using it going into... I recall using it going into Sen's Fortress for the first time, which is a pretty intense spike in difficulty once you get there the first time. And you sit in body and just get around all the enemies and you could backstab them and they wouldn't care. But yeah, just kick down a ladder. It's a shortcut I tend to forget exists, mainly because it's not all that useful, unless you happen to die here. Which is very possible, but doesn't usually happen to me too much. But yeah, that ladder will save you some walking. But you can't dunk your head in wax. Not that you really need to be honest. Because even though those hands can curse you and they do a bit of damage, it's fairly minor. As long as you don't panic, you just walk through them. And while it might seem weird for me to kill that enemy, it's actually very, very useful because they will just use range attacks like that guy up there to harass us from across the room. Much like the Crystal Sage, who is still firing at us from its new location. Right over there on a bridge. It will respawn down below in the first room every time. And I suppose you could just as well not attack it, but it's worth it killing it. And to kill it, you actually need to get it all the way up there to its final location. Otherwise it just won't move, I think. Actually, I've never tried, I can't know. But I think it just stays put down below if you don't actually attack it to make it go up. There's a crystal gem here. The fact that we are in an archive, there's crystals, and the crystal sage too might remind some of you of the Duke's Archives from Dark Souls 1, which was crystal infested, an archive much like this, and was actually owned by Seath the Scaleless. Now I don't believe that this archive is the same, because that really wouldn't make too much sense. But it's just a bit of an interesting connection to make here. And now here is a shortcut that could actually be a bit more useful. Then again, there's a lot of shortcuts in this area, actually. And it would be embarrassing dying to that crystal sage now, wouldn't it? I didn't know it had a melee attack, to be honest, in my defense. I thought I could just stand there and wait. Oh well. Sometimes shit just happens. Anyway, this is how you get back by using that shortcut we just unlocked. There's actually another opportunity to dunk our head in wax here in case we really need to do that. And this item there from the guy in the chair, that's actually between the two bookshelves we removed with that lever just before we died to the crystal sage like a freaking genius. And it's actually a good idea to just dunk your head into wax again, even if you already have, because it wears off eventually. And the scholar ring here increases our intelligence by, I think, 2 or 3 points. It can sometimes help if you just want to use a certain spell that is just a bit above your current intelligence. So you might be able to use a spell that way. And yeah, the sage still teleports up here. But it won't actually go to a completely new location somewhere across the room because, yeah, the developers aren't quite that much of big dicks, so. And now we get the final sorcery scroll, the Crystal Scroll, which contains spells that are reminiscent to the ones, actually they're not reminiscent, they're exactly the spells that Logan devised after studying Seath's research. And I keep mentioning this, but Seath's research drove Seath himself insane. So naturally, it also drove everybody who read it insane, like Logan, who decided in order to become more like Seath, he needs to get rid of all his clothes, because Seath was scaleless and thus naked. In fact, the only reason Big Head Logan still had his hat on is not just in reference to a particular song, because I don't think that's the case, though that's kind of funny, I just thought of that. But yeah, they just let him keep his hat because they were afraid that otherwise people wouldn't recognize him. But ah well. Now that we've taken care of the sage, we never need to worry about it again. Thankfully. Because it's actually the only thing that really makes this first section somewhat difficult. Not to say that it's easy, it's definitely an endgame area. But the sage just really is what actually gives it the edge. And this little bit here is actually behind the illusory wall, we just removed it earlier. And they opted not to fight this guy here. Because they can do quite a number on you. I mean, I have a history. You've seen me fight those guys. But with magic, it's a bit easier to actually take care of them. And finally, we get the Outrider Knight set. As well as a little spell called Soul Stream. Now let's read the description because it's actually fairly interesting. Sorcery imparted by the first of the scholars, when Lothric and the Grand Archives were but young. Fires a torrential volley of souls. The first of the scholars doubted the linking of the fire, and was leaked to be a private mentor to the royal prince. Well, the first of the scholars could possibly be Aldia from Dark Souls 2, who was actually the scholar of the first sin and presumably the first scholar of them. A lot of people seem to also think that it might be Pontiff Sullivan, which, given the fact that Pontiff Sullivan has his hands in just about everything, might also be the case. Anyway, now that we won't be so rudely interrupted by the Crystal Sage again like last time when we died here, we can now actually collect the items here, in particular the one down below. Using the spell Spook actually also lowers falling damage, so whenever you take a drop, use it. And here's the Avalon. It's kinda well hidden in this game, but in Dark Souls 1 it was deviously well hidden. Basically, you had to rotate a rotating staircase and then jump off at the right moment to actually drop onto a bookshelf that had the Avalon on it. Now, that rotating bookshelf staircase thing was actually quite simple if you knew the trick, which was just run, not sprint, just run down it as soon as you activate the staircase and you'll drop in the right spot. But you probably won't know that your first time around. Anyway, here's another shortcut. So, for the time being, why don't we just return to Firelink Shrine to give our final scroll to Orbeck? Because this will lead us right back outside to the first room of the Grand Archives. And we get access to two bonfires, actually. The one right outside and the one, like, 100 meters further down. So, yeah, two bonfires. Ah, well. So, final sorcery scroll. Let's just give it right to Orbeck. Let's see what he thinks of it. Logan's quite the legend after all.
Back again, I see. Perfect timing, too. Unfathomable. This is a crystal sorcery. Created by the Pale Dragon. Thought only to exist in legend. I am ever grateful to you. This is truly sublime. I am afraid this is a debt I cannot repay. Only, I will be sure to unravel it for you. Just a moment.
Now, Orbeck here says that Seath created these spells, but that's not true. It was actually Logan who used Seath's research to infuse his own spells with crystals. And now we've purchased all the spells.
In Vinheim, I was an assassin. A sorcerer only in name. A killer for hire. What a fool I was, thinking one day I would learn real sorceries. When I became undead, I was exiled from the school. But here I am, now, exploring the depths of sorcery. All thanks to you, I might add. You are no ordinary man. All these sorceries, and you've mastered every one. If this were the Dragon School, you'd be, well, overtly despised and banished from the place. Well, I suppose it's time I packed my bags. I would hate to see our agreement end sourly. Better left, tucked away, as a pleasant memory. You are no order. Well, I would hate better left. Promise to stay safe. It's been nice running our own little school.
And another NPC side quest finished. Well, almost. We could still summon him for the next boss and then find his corpse, but, you know, we're just gonna let him live, I suppose. Anyway, for the time being, let's just equip our new spells and then call it a day for now. Because what use is there to using a normal soul spear if you use a crystal soul spear? Well, cost efficiency maybe, because neither soul spear nor crystal soul spear are the best in efficiency. But hey, I'm just here to do damage. But anyway, see you next time when we explore more of the Grand Archives.